Good luck tonight.
At the start of the movie, Dr. James describes a supermoon as a full moon appearing at its closest point to Earth in its orbit. Although this phenomenon happens several times a year, last year was an exception. When a reporter questions why this hasn't occurred before, he avoids the topic, emphasizing the importance of focusing on known facts. He then cautions everyone to avoid moonlight that night, and assures her that they are actively seeking a solution, and will make it through. After this, we see Wesley setting traps around his house to prepare for the impending danger. He also electrifies the fencing to prevent any threats from entering. While setting up a camera, he suddenly hears gunshots and realizes they are coming from his neighbor Cody. Meanwhile, Reagan visits Lucy's house, where Lucy gives her spare batteries in case the power goes out, and pepper spray for safety. Wesley confronts Cody, warning him that he's shooting too close to Lucy's house and that there are kids all over the place. Cody dismisses the concern, saying he's just preparing because hell is coming their way. When Wesley questions him, Cody criticizes his approach to protecting his brother's family with just plywood and fencing. Wesley says he doesn't need to worry about them, to which Cody simply replies that he'll pray for him because once the sun sets, it will be every man for himself. Wesley approaches Lucy and says, "Let's go over the rules," to which she responds, "Don't open the door for anyone. Don't make noise, and don't draw attention," Wesley adds. "And don't hesitate for a second. I don't care who it is." He then tells her to call him in an emergency, and if not, he'll check in on her. We then learn that Wesley's brother Sean died in the line of duty as a firefighter and first responder for the Miami City Fire Department. As it gets late, Lucy tells Wesley he should go, but he hesitates, saying they're the only family they have left and that they'll understand, to which Lucy insists they can't do this without him, and that Sean would want him to go. Next, we see that a curfew has been imposed, and people are being urged to return home immediately. Aranda introduces Wesley as lead molecular biologist and the team leader, with Evan as his deputy and Amy as the wolf behavior expert. He explains that the supermoon triggers a rapid photosensitive DNA mutation, and the team is researching ways to block it. They've developed Moonscreen, a liquid that may shield human DNA from moonlight, and their findings could be key to a cure. He warns that emergency services will be suspended overnight and urges everyone to avoid moonlight. Next, subject number 3 enters the facility, and a flashback reveals that he is Miles, Amy's husband, who volunteered to be a test subject. Dr. Vasquez reassures Amy that they have taken every safety precaution and that Miles will be okay. Later, Wesley and his team check on the subjects, take their vitals, and spray them with the Moonscreen liquid. Meanwhile, the female subject starts crying, saying she's changed her mind, and Vasquez asks if they should sedate her, but Aranda disagrees, warning that sedatives could interfere with the test results, and she knew what she was getting into. After some time, the canopy retracts, revealing the moon in the sky, and everyone's heart races. But when the subjects show no changes, the team starts to believe their test was successful. Aranda orders the scientists to start collecting fluid and tissue biopsies, saying, "Let's get everything analyzed ASAP." Meanwhile, Lucy hears a distant howling echo, which also alarms Cody. Lucy tells Emma she will be right outside, saying she just wants to check on things. When she steps outside, the lights in their house flicker, and at the same time, Regan hears a noise, as if someone is outside her house. Frightened, she heads to her room but stops when she hears a door creaking open, followed by a low growl emerging from the darkness. As the growling grows louder, she steps back in fear, just as we see a werewolf in the kitchen. Meanwhile, Aranda asks Wesley about the samples, and Wesley explains that the mutation appears to trigger a dormant immune response. When Aranda questions why it's reacting now, and if it's viral or pathological, Wesley admits he's unsure and asks Evan for another tissue sample. But then suddenly, Miles begins to transform, and Phil warns everyone to stay back. As Miles continues changing, Wesley urgently tells the others to start spraying the formula immediately. However, before they can act, Miles suddenly grabs the machine, forcing the scientists to step back. At the same time, the other subjects also begin to transform, and Miles then hurls the machine, causing it to crash into a cage and get destroyed. Vasquez instructs the team to close the roof, but due to a malfunction, the canopy fails to close completely. Amidst the chaos, the subjects continue transforming into werewolves, and Vasquez orders her team to head for an exit. Wesley rushes to Aranda, who tells him that his suit has ripped. Wesley reassures him that he'll be okay. Evan rushes for a tranquilizer. However, Wesley realizes that Aranda has already started to transform. Aranda screams for Wesley to get away from him, but within moments, he fully transforms into a werewolf. As Evan approaches to inject the tranquilizer, Aranda attacks him. A soldier fires at Aranda, giving Wesley enough time to pull Evan to safety. During this, Vasquez watches in horror as the werewolves attack and kill the trapped scientists and soldiers one by one. Then, a werewolf picks up a soldier and hurls him into the cabin. Meanwhile, Wesley, Evan, and Amy encounter a werewolf. Wesley struggles to open the door as the werewolf approaches them, but just before it can get closer, the door finally opens, and they quickly rush inside the infirmary and shut it behind them. Meanwhile, Lucy is startled to see a glimpse of a werewolf outside her house, and at the same time, Cody spots another werewolf perched on a tree in front of his house. Carefully placing his finger on the trigger, he starts firing and hearing the gunshots. Lucy quickly turns her camera toward Cody's house, but she sees nothing there. Back at the facility, Wesley and Amy try to save Evan, but despite their efforts, he succumbs to his injuries. Amy says this wasn't supposed to happen and insists she needs to check on Miles. However, Wesley stops her, telling her that Miles has already turned. She argues that the formula worked, but Wesley explains that it didn't last, and they were too late to save him. As Amy calms down, she suggests waiting for help, but Wesley insists they'll die if they stay, as there are no weapons or defenses left, and the door won't hold for long. When Amy worries about moonlight exposure, Wesley reassures her that the formula works. Meanwhile, a werewolf grabs an old fridge and hurls it at Cody's window, shattering the glass and sending him flying backward, knocking him out. After some time, he regains consciousness, but his mask falls off, and he becomes exposed to the moonlight, triggering his transformation. Wesley and Amy manage to get into another room, where they cover themselves and grab whatever weapons they can find. As they spray themselves with the formula, Wesley tells Amy that it will last for about an hour. He then tells her that if either of them turns, they lose the other. They step out and immediately encounter a werewolf, but upon realizing it's Miles, Amy quickly shoots a fire extinguisher, giving them just enough time to escape. They drive away in a car, and Wesley calls Lucy to check on her, who assures him they're okay, but mentions hearing gunfire. She tells Wesley that she saw them entering Cody's house, and that if they can make it there, they should be able to reach her house as well. Amy tells Lucy to stay calm, warning that noise will attract them. But just then, Lucy suddenly hears Regan calling her name. Terrified, she turns and sees Regan standing outside. Wesley warns her not to answer it, but Lucy insists she can cover up and go get her. But Wesley warns that Regan could have turned. Ignoring him, Lucy tells Regan to hold on and prepares to go outside, only for Cody to pounce on Regan. Wesley crashes the car and bus. After some time, Wesley and Amy regain consciousness and quickly get out of the car. Meanwhile, Cody drags Regan's lifeless body and places it on the fencing. Inside, Lucy tells Emma to stay in her fort and keep her headphones on. She then steps out to check the screens and finally spots the werewolf standing right in front of the pepper spray nozzle. Without hesitation, she presses the button, releasing a blast of pepper spray directly at the werewolf. Wesley and Amy enter a building, and she tells him that wolves are predators that hunt their prey while running. Wesley asks, so they shouldn't run? To which she replies that if it's just one or two wolves, they can run and confuse them. But if it's a big pack, they have to stand their ground. She adds in a wolf fight, you either dominate, run, or die. As they step forward, they see numerous werewolves outside, destroying the cars parked along the road. Amy suggests backtracking and crossing over 5th, but Wesley says it's too far, and they don't have that much time. He proposes that if they move behind the cars, the werewolves won't see them. The two move forward cautiously, hiding and silently weaving between the cars to stay out of the werewolves' sight. After moving a little further, they realize that one werewolf is missing. Just then, a werewolf breaks through a door and steps outside. Meanwhile, another werewolf approaches from behind, but it hasn't noticed Wesley and Amy yet. They quickly and silently hide under a car, and as Amy prepares to shoot the werewolf, Wesley stops her. The werewolf then starts wrecking the car, but eventually leaves after some time. However, the next moment, a werewolf lowers his head and sniffs them, but he also leaves after some time. Meanwhile, Cody washes his eyes with water, and Lucy suddenly gets startled when she hears him howling. Wesley and Amy crawl out from under the car, and just as they start to believe the werewolves are gone, his watch beeps, and the werewolves hiding behind the car begin to rise. As they run, Wesley tells Amy that they need to get inside before the formula wears off. They spot the werewolves searching for them, and just then, Amy notices an open shutter. Without hesitation, they rush toward it and manage to slide inside just before it closes. The werewolves follow and begin trying to break through the shutter, but at that moment, a boy appears and tells them to follow him. They both follow the boy, and Amy asks what this place is, to which Wesley replies that it's a market and that tunnels run underneath it, which they could use to bypass this mess. Just then, a woman holds a knife to Amy's neck, and Wesley quickly says they don't want any trouble. Amy adds that they are scientists working on a cure, to which a man says there is no cure and that their kind doesn't belong here. Wesley explains that they're just trying to reach his family and ensure their safety. The man agrees to take them to the tunnel entrance, but after that, they're on their own. Meanwhile, Lucy notices that Cody has gathered more werewolves and is preparing to break into her house with them. Meanwhile, Amy and Wesley enter the tunnels and come across a locked gate. As Wesley prepares to break the lock, they suddenly realize a werewolf is behind them. They turn to shoot, but it attacks, smashing them through the gate. The werewolf then hurls Wesley aside and lunges at him. But as it closes in, Wesley grabs a metal rod and drives it into the werewolf. And after a tense struggle, the creature finally collapses and dies. They move forward, but before leaving the tunnel, Wesley tells Amy that they need to reapply the formula. However, he finds it's too hot to use. They break into a nearby store, but as soon as they enter, the alarm starts blaring. Acting quickly, Amy rips it out and smashes it onto the floor, and Wesley then puts the device into a fridge. After some time, the device is ready, and Wesley says they just need to find something to keep it cold. Amy offers to check the back, but as she leaves, Wesley gets alert hearing a noise. He cautiously searches the area and is shocked to find a young girl werewolf. She starts approaching him, and he warns her to stop, saying, "Don't make me shoot you." However, she lunges at him, just as Amy returns and tases her, knocking her out. Meanwhile, a werewolf shakes an electric pole, causing it to crash onto Lucy's fence and knock out the power to her house. The werewolves begin roaming around the house, searching for a way inside, but one of them suddenly gets caught in a leg hold trap. Lucy grabs the shotgun and warns the werewolves to back off or she'll shoot. But then, she notices one of them has climbed onto the roof. Moments later, a chilling scream pierces the air, and hearing it, Lucy reassures Emma the nails will hold them. Meanwhile, Wesley and Amy hear gunshots and spot soldiers battling the werewolves. Amy asks Wesley who they are, to which he replies he doesn't know, but they're going to get them out of here. Sometime later, when they chase away the werewolves, Wesley and Amy step out, but the soldiers suddenly turn on them. He and Amy insist they're allies and won't turn, assuring the soldiers they're protected. However, a werewolf attacks one of the soldiers, prompting the others to resume firing. Wesley and Amy quickly take cover behind a car, and noticing a werewolf approaching them, Wesley turns to shoot, just as the scene shifts to Lucy, who is also firing at the werewolves, desperately trying to keep them out of the house. She then realizes she only has 4 bullets left, and the scene shifts back to Amy and Wesley, where they spot a particularly menacing werewolf. A soldier turns to face it, but it hurls a body at him, knocking him down. Amy tells Wesley that they are forming a kill circle, and if they stay here, they are gonna die. Wesley says they get to the truck as it's their only shot, to which she says he gets to that gun, and she will be a distraction. She steps out, drawing the werewolf's attention, and the most dangerous one begins moving toward her. As it gets closer, it sniffs her before suddenly striking her. Furious, she replies with a loud roar, and the werewolf pauses for a moment, startled, then responds with a terrifying growl. Just then, Wesley calls out to the werewolf and opens fire, ultimately killing it and forcing the others to flee. Amy rushes toward the truck, but before she can climb in, a werewolf pulls her up. Shocked, Wesley jumps out of the truck, only to see that the werewolf has already taken her. Meanwhile, werewolves surround Lucy's house, forcing her to shoot at the roof, allowing moonlight to spill inside. However, she soon runs out of bullets. Grabbing a knife from the kitchen, she turns to Emma and says, "They're coming in. If you see something, point and spray." Just then, a werewolf smashes through a window. Terrified, they rush inside to hide as the creature prowls into the room, sniffing the air. But before it can find them, a sudden car honk outside grabs its attention. Wesley confronts the werewolves outside, revving the truck's engine. Then, he speeds toward them, and they charge at him in return. Wesley keeps pushing forward, plowing through several of them, until Cody jumps and lands onto the hood, prompting Wesley crash the truck into a garage. Back at home, Lucy hides Emma inside a wardrobe before taking cover behind the door. Moments later, a werewolf enters the room, sniffing the air. Suddenly, it smashes the wardrobe door and hurls Lucy across the room. As it turns toward Lucy, Emma stabs it, and the werewolf shifts its focus to her, only for Lucy to grab an axe and swing it straight into its head. Wesley then enters the house and locks the door behind him. And seeing him, Lucy and Emma breathe a sigh of relief. She asks what happened at the lab, to which he replies that it's a long story and admits he should have never left. Just then, they hear Cody growling, and Wesley tells them to hide. Cody frees himself by sliding the car, and Wesley warns Lucy that the house won't hold much longer. Lucy insists he can't go out there, saying if they wait until sunrise, they might survive. But Wesley tells her that the watch is set for sunrise, and she has 15 minutes. He then steps outside to confront Cody, admitting that he never liked him, and he is gonna bury him. After this, he looks up at the moon and unzips his jacket, exposing himself to the moonlight, and it triggers an immediate transformation. He fully transforms into a werewolf. The two lunge at each other, their snarls echoing through the night, igniting a brutal clash. Cody fights with everything he has, but Wesley is stronger, and with a vicious growl, he tears Cody's head clean from his body, letting out a triumphant growl. Lucy hides Emma in the pantry, telling her that no matter what she hears, she must not come out and must stay silent. If something happens, she wants her to wait until she hears sirens, and then run to the neighbors for help. Lucy then notices Wesley trying to break into the house, and she suddenly spots a bullet lying on the ground. She grabs the shotgun and approaches the door, calling out to Wesley, telling him that she knows he can hear her, and pleading with him not to do this. Wesley steps away from the door, and for a moment, Lucy believes he has listened and walked away. But then, she hears a noise behind her and turns to see Wesley breaking through the back wall. Determined to get inside, desperately, she reminds him that they are his family and that they love him, but he smashes through the wall and enters the house. As he advances toward her, Lucy frantically grabs a photo and urges him to think about his brother. She pleads with him to remember his brother and his niece, Emma, but instead of responding, Wesley lets out a piercing growl. Wesley looms closer, and Lucy raises the gun, ready to shoot, but before she can pull the trigger, the alarm starts beeping, and instead of firing at Wesley, she turns the gun toward the window and shoots, shattering the wood. Sunlight floods the room, and Wesley, caught in its rays, transforms back into his human form, and the movie ends here. Thanks for watching. If you enjoyed the chills, hit that like button, subscribe, and turn on notifications so you never miss a scare. Until next time, stay spooky.